What's up, guys? This episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Omaha Steaks and Tipsy L's. Tipsy L's, as you can see, wearing the beautiful sweater right now. Everyone should have an ugly Christmas sweater this time of year. Tipsy L's sweaters are all about fun, but are serious on quality and construction. Shop now so you have the best selection to choose from and have it in time for your ugly Christmas sweater party. They also have other holiday and collegiate attire and adult onesies, so get on that. You can get 20% off anything you order on the site by going to tipsyelves.com and enter code GAMECAST to checkout. That's tipsyelves.com with code Gamecast. No S, not Gamescast, Gamecast. Then Omaha Steaks. So here's the deal. Last month, Omaha Steaks sent us a family gift pack with 2 filet mignons, 2 top sirloins, 2 boneless pork chops, 4 boneless chicken breast, 4 kielbasa sausages, 4 burgers, 12-ounce package, all beef meatballs, 4 potatoes au gratin. How do you say that, Greg?
Au gratin. Who cooks
All gratin, caramelized apple tartlets, 1 Omaha Steak seasoning packet, plus 4 additional kielbasa sausages, and we had a damn feast courtesy of Greg Miller. Yeah. Thanks, Greg Miller. It was awesome. You can get yours by going to omahasteaks.com, enter code GAMES in the search bar, add the family gift pack to your cart to get a 77% savings. It's the gift guaranteed to be a hit. So yeah, omahasteaks.com, enter code GAMES. What's up, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode 97 of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Yeah, we got to do the math
Getting
on this.
deep up in it.
100's coming up soon.
Yeah,
It'll be one of the ones we recorded for the break.
For the break. That'd be fun. I want to do it because I
just do a
spoke
clip
about
show.
this before. For 100?
Yeah, just
No, 100. I want us to do our 100 best games of all time, where we just sit there and come up with it on the spot.
Okay.
And like do the behind the scenes list video that everyone always talked about doing at IGN, but it was a horrible idea to do that.
You couldn't record.
I'm glad
But we're gonna do it.
I'm glad we don't have any sense of self-control. Can we pull up Google spreadsheets back here and
Yeah, we can
build
do
it
it.
behind us? And
We can do whatever the hell we want.
Well, I guess Kevin will do it, but Kevin's
Yeah,
handwriting's
that'll be
so
fun.
bad.
And it's, just freaking, it's just the 100 games that we,
The
no,
100
I don't
games.
want to list them or rank them.
Yeah,
Just us deciding on 100 games.
the 100. We'll call it
The
the
100. The Kind of Funny
CW
100.
wrote a show about this.
They did. They did. As always, I'm Tim Gettys, joined by the coolest dudes in video games, Colin Moriarty and Greg Miller.
Na 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 na.
That was good. I liked that. How you guys doing?
I'm good. How are
I'm
you?
well,
Tim?
thank you.
Good. I'm pretty good.
I'm tired. I've been staying up these last few nights playing games till late.
I feel you, dude. I fucking feel you.
I'm very well rested.
All I want to do right now, Final Fantasy 15. It's
Yeah.
at home. It's here. It's
Yeah.
playable. People have beaten it. I haven't beaten it.
Sure.
I
We
mean,
in the credits.
I am in the fucking credits.
How long is it
What?
supposed to be?
So that's the thing. We'll get into this topic is Final Fantasy 15.
What up, everybody?
To get through the rigmarole real fast, this is the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Each time we get together to talk about video games, all the things we love about them. You can get it early on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, or you can get it later on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. Either way, Patreon producer Steven Insler loves you and
The
respects you, just like we do. So thank you for all of that stuff. I hope you guys are all enjoying Final Fantasy 15. And if you're not, I'm sorry for you. You have no soul and you don't love anything in life. Final Fantasy 15, man. I'm fucking
here.
so stoked about
All
this.
your dreams are here. They're coming
Finally,
true.
and I'm loving it. To answer your question of how long it is, it seems like it's all over the place. There's so many side quests, and the game's kind of built around side quests, very similar to like a Witcher 3 and games like that in the last couple of years. So how long does it take to beat it? Ranges from 15 hours to 60 hours.
15 hours?
Yeah, so people there was a post I saw on Kotaku, I want to say, where a whole bunch of people were tweeting how long it took them to beat it, and it really was all over the place. But
hours.
we're getting down into like the I think there was even some that were like 12 or 13.
That's got to be the shortest Final Fantasy game then.
But that's if
ever,
you're
right?
just barreling
Mainlining.
through it.
Oh, of
you know?
course. But I mean, like without speedrunning and exploiting the games, you can't beat any of them, I think, in that short amount of time, I don't think. Maybe the very old ones, but not.
Yeah.
I can't imagine getting through 4, 5, 6 or any of the ones after that in less than.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with just how games are set up now, where side quests are part of the game. Like they're like in the older Final Fantasy games, they were way more actual side quests, and they were totally optional. Whereas here, they're optional, but kind of, part of the main thing. Like
That cat will die if you don't feed it.
Exactly. But I think that it's been fun for me to play through, and like I do care more about the main quest than I do a lot of the side things. But I find myself getting sucked into them a lot, where I'm just like, oh, fine, I will feed the fucking cat. Although I didn't feed that cat.
You better go back tonight.
I tried to feed the cat, but didn't catch the right kind of fish.
Wouldn't work.
Now that's when I get on this cat's bad side right away. I'll tell you right now. If you're a starving cat and I bring you a fish, you're gonna eat this fucking fish. I don't care what color it is.
I mean, we just assume the cat's hungry. What if he just wasn't hungry? Prompto's there, just like he wants the yellow fish. It's like, how do you know? You don't speak cat.
Great point.
You're not Eliza Thornberry.
Maybe he has pain from a tumor growing inside of him, and that's why he's meowing.
Oh my god. Why can't Prompto sense that?
Yeah, that's the thing. How you guys feeling about it? How long has everyone played?
About 2 hours.
I'm like an hour 15.
I'm 8.5 hours.
Woo!
And I was trying to get through and beat it. I'm on chapter 5, about to be done with chapter 5.
Wow, you're going quick, huh?
But I just want to I want the experience of it. I'll go back to the side quests and stuff later. But I hit a wall where I'm like, fuck, I need to grind. I need to train. I need to, because I hit a dungeon and I'm just like, I'm getting my fucking ass handed to me. And it's just like, I don't think it's even possible for me to progress there. And I was looking at where everyone else online, where their levels are at. And like, there's people in like chapter 3 and they're like level 30. And I'm like,
what level are you?
Low 20s, like 21, I think.
Yeah, you're outpacing the probably the design intent.
Definitely. And it's like, that was one of the moments where I'm like, we've been asking ourselves, is this Final Fantasy? What is Final Fantasy? That moment's Final Fantasy to me. Sure. The moment where I come across something where I'm like, oh, this game's easy. I'm just kind of going through and it's just, the typical RPG. There's the easy enemies and there's the boss fight. And every once in a while, there's a minor challenge, but everything's pretty simple. But then you hit a wall and you're like, oh, fuck, I need to grind.
Shouldn't be in this area.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been having a great time with it.
Yeah, I popped it in last night after playing Last Guardian for a while, and I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I'm enjoying the combat of it. That's what I was talking to Colin about today. Like, when I went to the tutorial and I was expecting, all right, here comes a really boring fucking tutorial, right? But the gameplay I think's really cool, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually fun, and I like this, and I like the whole, holding the block, dodging all their attacks, and then parrying at the right time, or doing the warp strike and doing all these different moves that I remember Ryan Clements being a huge fucking dork and talking about, but I didn't ever want to go play Decidium, do Cockum, and know what the fuck any of this warp quantum breaks were. So playing through that, I was like, oh shit, this is a lot of fun. Start the game proper, right? And immediately it's just like, all right, cool. Like, I want to go combat. I want to go into this and stuff. And it's like when they're pushing the car and like the whole scene with his father and whatever. I'm like, all right, well, you're being a brat, but whatever. Go ahead. Let's go. All right, cool. We're in the car. The Florence and the Machine starts playing. Yeah, I've heard about this for a long time. But like their conversation, like this is what I was telling Colin. Shutting my eyes and listening to the conversation, I'm like, all right, cool. Ignis is a bitch. I don't like his little accent. I don't like his attitude either. He's got a fucking attitude. But Prompto's my boy. Gladius, my boy. All right, cool. These guys are cool so far.
Gladiolus.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
My apologies.
Well, it's Gladiolus, right?
Yeah.
When I open my eyes, though, well, it's a dumb name. So Glad.
It is.
We're gonna call him Glad. All right. When I open my eyes, right, and I look at this though, it's just like there's this weird, it's black and white. This juxtaposition of like them in their leather outfits and their crazy ass hair, but walking through the desert and then running into people who are dressed like normal human beings, and then it's like what. I want to like you. And again, tip of the sword here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I had never done this tutorial, so I did all the tutorials. Then I jumped in. I'm watching all the cutscenes and playing all the thing. I left off last night before jumping over to get the last Watch Dogs Online trophy where we got our car back. We took our selfie in front of it. So not deep into this game at all. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping the fact that I like Prompto so much and I like how they all interact together, I'm going to continue to like the game. But like when it was like, all right, cool, go off on this thing and do that, I'm like, all right, cool. And we're just running through the desert in these like leather coats with half of Michael Jackson glove on. I'm just like, this is weird. And I was bitching around and calling her live. And everybody's like, well, you can change the costumes. Well, I'm like, can I change them to normal clothes and have them run around like what the other people are dressed as? I don't know. It's a question for you.
I don't know. I just kept them.
And it's just normal. Like, that's the part of like, it's weird to be playing this game and be like, I can't wait for the next battle. I can't wait to unlock the next, ability point or whatever. I can't wait to level up. But be like, all right, well, it's weird. Let's get the car back. Maybe that'll help. Maybe if we're driving around in the car, that'll help. I'm not sure how I'm feeling.
I was so excited last night when I was playing and I saw Greg Miller's playing Final Fantasy 15. The journey begins, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely though. It was that thing of I finished it, or I finished my play session, and then jumped into Watch Dogs to try to finish off this platinum, or at least make sure the online trophy wasn't broken, because I now only need the last mission. That way I can get it done and just be committed to Final Fantasy and not feel like I'm being pulled back to that other game.
Yeah. My thoughts on what you're saying about the juxtaposition is I 50% agree with you, because they're Kingsguard people and whatever. So
I know.
It's like, cool. And they had that the throwaway line.
They have a throwaway line of like, oh, wear them and be proud or whatever.
And it's like, my thing is like, they're obviously from a very privileged royal space, and they are going into rural random ass motherfucking places. So there's going to be a difference.
But I'd be fine with if it was like, those people were in raggedy outfits, but they come out and they look like they're just wearing our clothes. I'm like, wait a second.
So I mean, I don't know I'm like, I'm a little more forgiving about, but what I don't like, and I was telling Colin about this, I think on PS I Love You, I feel like their voices are awesome. I love the voices. I love the characters. I love the writing. I love it. I mean, I feel like he is the one that I like the least, I would say, out of all of them in terms of character.
He's breaking my heart because he looks like he should be Egon Spengler from the real Ghostbusters, but then he opens his mouth and he's British and he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder.
He's real British. Voice actor, same guy that does Junkrat in Overwatch, which is fascinating. Anyways, the writing I love, and the characters and their interactions I am over the moon for. Totally in. That's why I love this game. But seeing those voices come out of those character designs, it just doesn't fit, especially with Noctis for me. And it's one of the things where I'm like, often, like I'll hear the voice and the closing your eyes thing, I'm like, totally in this. But then you see them, and it's not even so much that I'm mad at the designs. It's just that I don't feel like the voice and character fit that look.
Yeah. And that's distressing that you're 8 hours in and feel that way, because that's how I feel now. And I was like, oh, eventually I'll adjust and this will, be that character to me.
But I mean, my thing is, it's just like, it's not that big of an issue for me. All the other things matter more, the character interactions and the actual gameplay. Writing. Yeah. I mean, I don't even just talk about just the characters. Like their designs not matching up with that. It's kind of like, I feel like a lot of that is symbolic of the problems this game has. And I don't like that we're starting off talking so negatively about it. Like, I love this game so far. 8.5 hours in, totally in. This is exactly what I wanted it to be to an extent. I'm so happy with it. It's definitely, I did not think that Final Fantasy 15 would be in my Game of the Year consideration so far. Absolutely is in that conversation. But the big problem for me is that this game feels so ambitious, and it feels like it's trying to be so big and do so many different things. And you see them, and they did really good at a lot of them. This game is very similar to Uncharted 4 in many ways. This game is very similar to Witcher 3 in a lot of ways. This game is very similar to all these other games. And I feel like most of it, they just nailed so much of it, and then they just didn't get that last bit. Like, seeing characters talk, I think I'm so disconnected from it because the lip syncing is bad.
Sure, that's also true.
And I'm used to games of this caliber, Uncharted 4, being like, oh, wow. Like, I trust that character is speaking to me. This, it seems a bit more like it's dubbed over.
100%.
And it takes you out a little bit. And there's just like a lot of like weird control things where it's like the combat is an action game, but it's not. So it's like you kind of expect it to play a certain way, but then you're running around, and every time you go to pick up an item and it's like hit X, you're just standing there jumping, and you're just trying to pick up the damn thing. It's like the button configurations are a little rough in some ways. And I highly recommend you go into the options and change it to type B or type C controls. It makes it way better.
What's
way
wrong
easier
with
to control.
Just the jumping thing?
Well, a big issue is the type A by default, the square is to defend and circle is to attack, which means you can't do both. You can't immediately switch from one to the other. Whereas like type C, you're using the L2 and R2.
Oh, okay.
So it's way easier to be able to use the analog stick to aim at your next target and be able to defend from one thing, hit the next guy, and keep moving. It makes it way more fluid. And also, I recommend going into the options and turning on wait mode, because that allows you to, if you stop moving, everything stops, and you can kind of read the field and see what people's weaknesses are and like kind of come up with a plan. It makes it more like a Final Fantasy game.
Gotcha. See, yeah, not knowing a Final Fantasy game, which is something we've talked about, right? Like, I like that it's just pandemonium. Now, granted, again, I'm just like, fighting scorpions in the desert or whatever. I'm like, just slashing everything, warp striking all over the place, often to the wrong area because I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I only played for 2 hours. You can't possibly form any sort of coherent opinion about the game in 2 hours. That said, I have impressions of it that I think are worthwhile. First of all, I like the depth of it. I think that this game in a lot of ways is a direct reaction to 13. And in terms, 13 was not deep. 13 had the combat was deep, but nothing else about it was very deep. Obviously, it was a very linear game, a very boxed-in game. Even things like with like equipment and stuff like it just didn't have any depth to it. And that really did start with 7, actually. I mean, 7, when you go back and play, you have like a weapon and an accessory and materia. I mean, it's not as deep as having like 4 or 6 where you're equipping different weapons on different characters and you have different accessories and different helmets and all, like, so I like the idea of having like some sort of depth. And I also like the experience system. I like that you like basically keep your experience until you go rest, and then depending on what you're doing or where you are, you get more experience or level up more. And I think that's really cool. And I was reading that in the end game, you can get something like 3 times as much experience by resting in certain hotels and stuff. So I think that's actually a pretty neat thing. That it gives you an idea of or a time rather to go into the menus and craft your characters and use your AP and all that kind of stuff on the sphere grid or whatever the fuck it is they call it. So,
which is awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. I think that it's such a good system. Like, I love the sphere grid in 10, but this one, man, I like that you don't need to start in the center and get all over the place. It's like there's the different tabs, and you get more and more tabs as you play.
And it seems like they all overlap. Like, you're doing it for everybody in a lot of ways, which I think is cool too. Mm-hmm. And I was reading about I think Jason Schreier on Kotaku put up a piece about what you should go after first, and there's certain things or whatever, and I haven't really been doing that. I've just been going after what I think is best. But so I like that. I like the systemic depth of the game, and I really do think it's reactionary to 13. And I think that they made a wise decision to make it deeper and to make it harder. I think the game is just clearly a harder game than 13, and in that way, I think that, well, it speaks to me on that level because these games are supposed to be hard. You're supposed to grind, and not maybe to the extent of Dragon Quest, but Final Fantasy games were never really easy. People might remember Final Fantasy IV being dumbed down for us when it was on Super Nintendo, but when it came out on DS sometime later, they ramped up the difficulty to where it should have been. And you remember, like, wow, Final Fantasy really does have a difficult heritage that goes far beyond just unfair battles and all that kind of stuff. I also really like the world in a vacuum. I think the world is cool. And I was telling you, and you were surprised, although I haven't really been seeing some other people say it, but I don't know, to me, I'm like, I just feel like the specific desert area that we're in, I'm like, I just feel like this is kind of like, I don't want to say kind of like Final Fantasy 12, but I get a 12 vibe just from the geography. Like, not from the buildings, not from the cars. It's nothing like that in 12, but I just was like, maybe it's because we're in this world in 3D or whatever. Maybe if we were in Figaro in Final Fantasy 6 and we saw that rendered in 3D, it would look just like this. And so maybe I would also draw a correlation to that, but we didn't see it like that. So, I like that specific part about it as well. The reason this game doesn't have its hooks in me yet, and I tweeted about that before, and the reason why I've just not been playing it very much, is because there's just certain parts of it that I think are dissonant. To kind of expand on Greg's point, the world doesn't fit with the characters, doesn't fit with the story, doesn't fit with, like, none of these themes actually match. And I feel like the world in the game was built, and then they're like, what can we put in the world? And then, like, what is the story of the world? But none of them really seem to vibe with each other. Like, I don't even know who the fuck these characters are. I mean, I'm like paying attention to the story. I'm like, who are these people? Like, I understand like the whole vibe and what they're doing and their quest, I guess. But I liked how Final Fantasy games introduced you to people. They took time to show, like, we were talking about 6, which I think is one of the great games of all time. And I don't think a lot of people would dispute that. You start with Locke and Terra and you get to know them, right? And then you slowly get to know, well, you find Edgar. And so you get a little bit of time with Edgar, and then you get a little time with Sabin and all sorts of stuff. And then so you get to know everyone and how they fit together and why they belong in this world. And in this particular game, you don't, like, it's really the first Final Fantasy game where this is your party forever. This is your party, and you start from the second one with them. And I think that's weird because I like games where it's like 30 hours in, this new guy, Edge in Final Fantasy IV or something like that, or Yuffie or Vincent in Final Fantasy VII, where they just come in and it changes the dynamic and it changes the game and they change the story and it changes the meaning when they're in the party. But so I think that I think that's lost on some people. When I see people, I was reading our friend Vince's review and other people's reviews, and I'm like, they're really talking about the characters, and I appreciate that people like the characters, but as a Final Fantasy game, that's actually one of the major things that's missing for me. Is I'm like, these characters are weird, not because they're dressed in leather or because they're bros or anything like that, but because I don't understand how they even fit, and I know we'll get to that later, but usually you kind of build that story in your mind as you go. And so I think that that's one of the things that's lost in the game. And I think structurally, we have to have a conversation as players. And I think Square Enix has to have the conversation internally about what a Final Fantasy game is. And like, I'm not begrudging this game existing. And I'm not saying that Final Fantasy can't be whatever they want it to be, because obviously Tabata and those guys feel like, the Final Fantasy disease and all that kind of stuff, that they have to make their games. But I'm like, what? Like, is Final Fantasy just whatever the fuck we want it to be now? Like moving forward, like, is there nothing that is going to draw us in. The combat's different. The world is open. It's very Western inspired. That's all great, but that kind of bothers me too, because I feel like when you play a Final Fantasy game, at least when I did when I was a kid, and some people have pointed out to me that I haven't truly liked a Final Fantasy game in over 15 years, and that's true. It wasn't really since the PS1 era that I really loved a Final Fantasy game, and I did like 12 because I didn't like 10. I think maybe I was compensating a little bit and being like, well, 12 is fantastic, but it's not. But I feel like it's like a glove, like an old glove you find in the drawer and you put it on and it still fits. And we're so far removed actually from that particular heritage that I'm like, well, what does it mean? We've talked about this in the past with Dragon Quest and how I think that Square Enix does a much better job of, even with 10, aside from 10, making it feel like, well, it's a Dragon Quest game. We might change it, but it's Dragon Quest. And so I think that they have to ask those specific questions. But I'm glad people like it. I want to continue to go into it with an open mind. I think that there's a lot to build on and a lot of intrigue in the game. I think what's going to end up happening to me, because I've been reading a lot of things, is there's a lot of people that have no idea what this is going on in the story. And I don't even know who the characters are. Like, I don't even know, like you're saying Noctis. I'm like, I don't even know who that is. It's one of them. I know. I think he's the main character, right?
Yeah, he's the prince.
So I'm trying to learn, and that's my own deficits too. But I think what I'm going to do with this game, it reminds me of the way I played a lot of other games that I actually really loved, like Amalur or something like that, where I'm like, I don't really care about the story. Mm-hmm. I'm just in this world, and I'm going to figure it out as I go, and then build on that. So I think it's positive and negative, and we'll see how it all ends up. I think that my major problem though is the dissonance of the components of the world and the story, and the kind of thrusting these characters on you without really any context.
Yeah. Going off of that, I feel for me, that was a surprise in both a positive and negative way. Negative in the sense that after the 10 years of seeing trailers for this game, like I wanted the story. Like there were so much things that we've seen that aren't in this game. They instead are in the Kingsglaive movie or in they're just straight up cut and just changed up or whatever. And like, I mean, for example, this is really early on in the game, and we've seen it a million times in trailers, so it's not really spoilers. But the capital getting like ransacked, and just like the big event where there's that fight and confrontation, like we've seen so many times in trailers, like the bros being part of that and like that happening. And it's like for it to be just kind of like a throwaway like cutscene in this, it kind of is like, oh man, like this story really doesn't matter, and that was surprising to me in a bad way because I'm like, oh, I wanted to care. But it was surprising in a good way when I'm like, all right, cool. They are admitting the story doesn't matter. This stuff is just a means to an end of it's about the characters. You're going on this adventure, and it is about you learning about them as they go. I like that it is just the four dudes. You go, and there's not too much backstory. Granted, I had watched the movies and anime before, and I'm pretty well educated on who they are, and so I know. So I'm a little biased when it comes into it because I don't know what the experience is like for somebody that just has no idea who the fuck they are.
Man, I don't.
But I feel like you will in 8 hours, and I think that that's what's cool. They do a good job of every single car ride taking advantage of it, and them constantly chattering and constantly like using nicknames to talk to each other, like calling Ignis Iggy, like instantly makes him more endearing. It's just like, oh, this fucking asshole butler guy, but it's like, oh, but these dudes see him as Iggy.
And that's the great point, that he's going to grow up to be a butler. You act like that, you talk like that, that's all you're ever going to be is a butler. Mm-hmm. Don't be like this Iggy kid, guys. Be fun. Don't be a stick in the mud. He's a stick in, be prompt. Everybody loves, he's Michelangelo.
Come the fuck on.
Come on.
Running around with them selfies and shit. I love that.
I love the fact that he's taking photos.
He's so great.
Going through the menu and looking at like the photos from my battle and all the stuff that he's taking. I'm like, that's fun.
But my thing is, my favorite thing so far about the game is I think it's fun. I think it's fun to be in the world, and I love the entire world, not just the actual like location that they are, but the characters and the idea that there's all these different cities that are connected and they all work together. When I played a lot of the other Final Fantasy games, it kind of just felt like a bunch of villages next to each other that were just there. Some of them did a better job than others. I think Final Fantasy 7 actually did a great job of like making the world have like a
structure,
social dynamic structure going on. But with this one, it really does feel like my real world. This feels like with the cars and modern stuff, it's like the chocobos are the weird thing. Like that's something the prompter gets excited about because it's outside the norm because we all have cars, right? And I like that it feels like they're going from like the West Coast to the East Coast. Like there's big cities over here, there's big cities over there, there's a couple things in the middle, but I like the dissonance because it feels real. Like these guys that are from the capital over here, now they're just in the middle of nowhere. People are just middle of nowhere. People doing middle of nowhere things. So they're not being so much story elements in that stuff. Makes sense in my head because I'm like, that's what a road trip is. You're just kind of going through and like what's happening in New York wouldn't be mattering to somebody driving in the middle of the country, you know? And I kind of like that as they hear these radio transmissions or start to get updates as things are happening about what is going on in the bigger story. It's cool. And I feel like their dynamics between each other change and like keep going, where it's like, I went from being like, oh man, okay, I don't know what the hell's going on, to, oh shit, I'm invested in this. And I don't really even need to get to the next cutscene because I just kind of care about what they're doing together at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I've noticed that people have been saying, some common feedback that I really just super disagree with, is that people are saying, well, story was never important in Final Fantasy. And so this game's no different. And I'm like, you guys are just wrong. You're just wrong, And that's one of the things that gets me with these anonymous people, these tweets and on forums and stuff that I'm reading. And I'm like, but the story always did matter. And I think that goes into in the great ones. And I think that goes into the character development and how that all kind of ties in together. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that not so much in the 8-bit era, because the 8-bit NES games or Famicom games had no story. But by the time you start, or a small story, 3 had a story, but 4, and not so much 5, but 6, and then 7, 8, 9. I mean, these games had, in the PS1 era, these games had stories that were intrinsically tied to the world and intrinsically tied to the characters. And they actually really did thrive on some sort of dissonance. In 4, Sid and his airships and the fact that he was an engineer was super weird when you put him next to Edge, who's a ninja from like kind of a ninjutsu kingdom, and then you put him next to Tella, who is like a gray mage or whatever, and all these kinds of things. Like, they didn't really fit together with all this technology and with the nature of Golbez and all these kinds of things, but it worked. And in 6, we always talk about the steampunk aesthetic and how Narsh had, the steampunk and the engines and the steam and all that kind of stuff next to Figaro, which can go underground into the sand and all that kind of stuff. But they were using, Edgar was using auto crossbows and chainsaws and stuff like that. But then they were in a world of magic and with swords. But they had these big cities like, the capital of the empire where Gestel was, where it's like super modern and stuff. And I always liked that. And 7 again was just like that, with Midgar and the major corporations and the Turks and all these kinds of things kind of juxtaposed against what was going on in Cosmo Canyon. And there was always this weird, like, they somehow seamlessly put these disparate elements together. And that's the only thing I hope is with 15 is, and again, it's so preliminary, and I'm trying to be open-minded about it, where I hope that they're able to do that, because again, to build on what Greg was saying, I look at this world and I'm like, I just don't understand what the hell is going on here. Like, it doesn't, it's not congruent. But maybe that's not what's important. But we shouldn't say that it was never important, because it was always important, actually, in all the great Final Fantasy games. And I see that kind of stuff going on a lot right now. And I'm like, you're wrong. Like, that was what was important. That's all we had, like in the 16-bit era, were the stories and the characters. We didn't have these pretty graphics in these open worlds.
Well, when we were talking about this on PS I Love You, and I was saying that, and I don't think that the story doesn't matter. I think the story in Final Fantasy is definitely one of the most.
I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. I'm saying these people.
No, I get it. But like I was one of the people that brought this point up. I was just saying that I don't think that that any of the stories in Final Fantasy are like immaculate storytelling, like perfect, right? And I think that with this, I need to beat it. Like, I can't speak on the story until I know.
Yeah, I'd like to do another topic.
Yeah, we definitely should.
Yeah, these are initial impressions.
Yeah, for sure. But to me, like, what does story mean? Like, are we talking just plot? Are we talking narrative? Are we talking about the overall, like, the world and all of that stuff that goes into it? Because I feel like with this, there is a strong story told, but at the end of the day, the plot of it is there's a dude and his friends that are essentially doing a bachelor party road trip to get him married. There's a whole bunch of other political shit on top of that, but that's the plot, right? And I think that it being that simple leaves room for more things to happen. And so I'm excited. Like, obviously, there needs to be a boss fight at the end. What's it going to be? I don't know at this point. I have no idea. Like, where's it going to come? Like, what is the bigger threat and all this stuff? And even as I play, like, more and more things, like the familiar Final Fantasy elements start to come in, like summons. How are they involved in this game? I think it's really unique and interesting. And I'm like, oh shit, like that's. I thought the Final Fantasy X did a really good job with the Aeons of making them a huge part of the story. And with this, it's like I appreciate that this game. I feel like most things feel earned. Like, when things that are familiar to you are introduced, it's like, oh, that's a good twist on something that we knew. And as you keep going, it's like it starts to feel more and more right. And the world, I feel, starts to feel more and more connected and works with all the other elements really well.
Yeah, but I will say, I think you're right, and I think I just haven't seen enough of it yet. That the painting's still being painted for me. So I mean, who knows like what the final product's going to look like to me. I think a lot of people are telling me that I'm going in with kind of a more negative mind. I'm like, no, but I'm trying not to be too excited about it. I'm critical of the game. I'm critical of everything I play. I want to like this game because I like Final Fantasy. I'd love to be reattached to the franchise the way I used to be because it's a very important franchise to me. I will say that the one cool thing that it does, and I don't think it means it in a narrative sense, but one thing that I've missed in recent Final Fantasy games, specifically starting, I think, more with 12 and 13, but it really did start even before that. I actually think it even started with, in the PS1 era to a degree, not really, was having these characters that did a specific thing of a specific class and that cannot be altered. So Portman and Palom are mages. They're not going to ever be front row characters that are going to fight. And for people that don't know, you put different rows for characters in old Final Fantasy games to protect them. If they're weak and they cast magic, you don't need to be in the front to do damage. And I liked that kind of dynamic, and we've kind of lost that as things became. Actually, 6 was the game that started to make them really agnostic. Well, that's not true. 1 was really the game that started to make them agnostic, but any of the class-based ones, 5, for instance, but 6 with the Esper system did give us a bit of both because it was like, well, Locke's a thief, and Terra's a magic user, and Setzer's a gambler, but they can all use the exact same set of magic based on the Espers, and so it gave this kind of dynamic kind of way of taking what they give you that can't be altered and altering it anyway, and I think that that's pretty cool. And what I like about what 15 does, to the point of the photography and the fishing and all of this, is I like that they have their differences in combat, obviously, but also they have their different outside interests, I guess, that do add a dynamic to their characters, but also drive some element of the story, whether it's the fishing element of the story or whatever. And I like how those things are graded. I like deep systems, and I think Final Fantasy can learn a lot from the deep systems of Western role-playing games, and I think that they are. So there's a lot to like about the game in a preliminary sense, too. I'm just kind of surprised with how much I do like about it. That it doesn't have its hooks more in me. Like I was telling Greg and I was making him laugh, but I was serious. I'm like, I have The Last Guardian and I have Final Fantasy 15, but I actually want to play like Letter Quest Remastered. Like that's a game I know is fun and I'm having fun with it on my Vita.
Colin
and
Moriarty.
And I'm like, but like you have to go with what's most fun and what draws to you, right? And I'm not doing that. I'm actively not doing that, but there's also no shame in that. And I'm just shocked with I think it's because I see these elements on like different parts of the painting that I'm like, I like all these parts, but how do any of them connect? And that's like the one thing that I'm investigating as I continue to play the game tonight. And I think we should definitely do another topic on this, specifically because with this and The Last Guardian as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about next week, these are just historically important games that are coming out within very close proximity of one another. And so I think that as people that have been, some people that watch this or play games, a lot of people that probably watch this play games weren't even playing games or interested in games when this game was announced. And I don't think that they realize how important this kind of moment is for us, even though we've become very sardonic, and at least I have very deprecating about it. And I didn't really even believe it was ever going to come out until this year. Like I really did believe they were going to end up canceling both of those games. So there's something to that as well, where there's an extra loaded element to it. Because I was a junior, I think, in college when it was announced. And now I'm 32. So there's an extra element to it. And so people think like, well, you want to not like that. People tell me like, you want to not like it and you want to be hard. And I'm like, actually, it's the exact opposite because I want the whole circle to be complete. And it actually was worth it all along. So we'll see how it goes.
So far for me, it has been. I mean, I've been down on it throughout the years in a very different way than you, but just in the sense that like I was worried about it and I was worried that it wasn't going to live up to what I wanted from it. And I think that it hasn't lived up to what I wanted, but it's giving me something different that I love. And I think that that's awesome. The music is amazing. The animations, it reminds me of Inside in a lot of ways, where like I'm constantly shocked at the unique animations in given situations where I'm like, man, like there was so much thought put into so many little things that it really does start to add up. And I appreciate it, and I want nothing more than just go back and play it, even though right now currently I am fucked and underleveled and in a really bad place where spoilers that I don't want to say things are happening to me that are making my life really hard, but I want to get through it, as frustrating as this part is.
So you got to the wedding mini game.
Yeah, exactly. This
so
isn't Final Fantasy X.
The one thing I will say moving forward is that I hope, if 15 is a reaction in a lot of ways to 13, and I think it is, clearly. It wasn't obviously to begin with. It was supposed to be a 13 game, but it
was supposed to come out day and date with 13.
So I mean, it wasn't in its element on PS3 it's supposed to be that way. But I think that a lot of the things, a lot of the depth, a lot of the added nuance to the game is a reaction to 13. My hope is that 16 is a reaction to 15 in the sense that I want antiquity again in Final Fantasy. I want old things, and one of the cool
Don't think you're gonna get it, Colin.
well, I don't want it to be like 9. Like 9 was a fantastic game. I think 9 was awesome. You can make the case I think that 9 is better than 8 and 7, and certainly better than 8. But 9 was a very obvious reaction to everyone's like, what is this? This was when I think Square and everyone was a little more listening to the reactionaries like me that were like, well, 7 was great and 8 but like, why do they have guns? Like what is this is a little weird. And so they're like, well, they gave us 9, and 9 was like a very fucking classical style Final Fantasy game in the PS1 style. And I don't want it to be quite that extreme, but I want to see what their vision is with this modern take on Final Fantasy in terms of technology and in terms of game design, which I think is a huge step for them forward. But what does that look like with the old aesthetic? Like, I think that would be interesting and cool, to see swords and knights and dragons and all that kind of stuff, but in that medieval kind of setting. And I hope I hope we're far away from that, and maybe we never even get it, but I hope that we do end up getting that, because that when I see modern role-playing games like this, I'm like, that's fine, but it makes me yearn for something a little more familiar. Again, that glove that feels right.
But when was the last time the glove felt right? When was the last Final Fantasy that was Final Fantasy?
9.
Okay. And that was 15 years ago, you said?
That was 2000, yeah. 16. Almost 17.
Yeah.
Then they were banging those things out really quick, too. I mean, it was, 7, 8, 9 came out within 3 years of each other.
Yeah.
So it was they were certainly, a little more than that, but they were certainly,
Things are just different. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to is video games are in a different place. So what is Final Fantasy? It's like, all right, well, what is Super Mario? What is Uncharted? What is Tomb Raider? Like what is Metal Gear? And Metal Gear Solid 5 is I can't believe I haven't brought that up yet. Like this game is the Metal Gear Solid 5 of Final Fantasy.
Yeah. And
that's, a good thing and a bad thing. But like I'm having a great time with it because of those things, because of the good of it. I'm not having a bad time of it because of the bad things. So I just think that like when you look at like something like Mario or Zelda, for example, they're old school 2D versions and 3D versions. They're different games, but they're still Mario. They're still Zelda. And I just think that we're in a different era now with Final Fantasy where like we can't get those games anymore because that's different, And that's where things like Bravely Default come in, where it's like that is what those are.
Right.
And they are trying to give you more of that. But the Final Fantasy is a AAA franchise, and I feel like it needs to be this type of game to have any chance at success.
That's the point.
I think both critically and financially.
Yeah, because you figure if to go back to the Final Fantasies that fit like a glove for you would be to go back to games I have no interest in playing. And as it is a AAA tentpole, this is what they need to make out of Final Fantasy. They want new players like me to come in.
Yeah. Anyway, again, I'm excited to go back and play it.
Me too.
I'm excited to keep talking about it. I can't wait to beat this game. Next topic. Speaking of sequels, video game sequels. This year we got a whole bunch of them. Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah.
Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
Dishonored 2. Yeah.
Dead Rising 4 is out the week this publishes.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception
Call of
4.
Duties
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So the topic is, do sequels still have the same type of panache that they used to in terms of you put a 2 in front of a game or at the end of a game and it will sell better?
Sure. Yeah,
we've seen some shit this year.
That was the argument forever, right? The fact of why do you keep making sequels? Well, sequels sell really, really well, and that's why you keep doing it because you keep expanding on the fan base and da. And then we're seeing Watch Dogs 2 underperform. We're seeing Titanfall 2 underperform. No idea what's happening with Dead Rising 4, but just today because it's not out yet, obviously, but on Colin Moriarty Live, right? Somebody hit us up and was like, "Why is no one talking about that game?" And that's always the canary in the coal mine that something's wrong. Why aren't people talking about this? And it's what we said, earlier about how Halo doesn't seem to be a big a deal. Gears of War didn't seem to be as big of a deal because these were sequels that came out in the years past, and the video game industry stopped and took notice. Whereas it felt like, even Call of Duty this year, not there. Now, granted, not a sequel, but another Call of Duty. You know what I mean? Something else happening in that franchise. And I guess if I'm thinking of sequels, though, Uncharted 4 delivered, and I'm talking about like
I think Gears did too.
It did, but I don't. I'm talking about in terms of what I think Sony, not critically and not with like hardcore fans, but like with numbers, right? Do we get numbers on Gears?
Gears was third on MPD without counting digital sales or
okay.
bundles, so I would assume it might even been number 1.
Perfect then.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that people been this shattering has been going on for a while. I think it's kind of coming to a crescendo towards the end of the year. Is that the industry might be in for another crash? Not in a specific catastrophic 1983 sense, nor in the we're going to have a 10-year fucking generation like we did last time because of the because people that particular point's really lost on people. The reason that generation was so long is because of the financial crash. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been that long. I think that's somewhat obvious, but the thing that I think is happening here is the crash is going to be a readjustment of expectations for AAA, and a truncation of auto-sequelizing games. I think that what Watch Dogs 2 clearly bombed. Titanfall 2 clearly didn't do well. Dishonored 2 clearly didn't do well. So I think that, and even games that, sales-wise. Of course, that's what I mean, sales-wise. Critically, actually, all those games were great. And even games that sold well didn't do as well as expected. Battlefield 1 apparently was on sale very quickly. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare definitely underperformed. I think GameStop said that themselves. So even though like we had this expectation that Titanfall 2, for instance, was going to underperform because of the proximity in which it was released to two bigger franchises, and in my estimation, having beat all three of them, far better games than Titanfall 2, they all actually underperformed. And so is it because they all we don't often get 3 shooters at the same time? So how do you read into that? But then I'm seeing stuff like Super Data, the marketing firm I was just reading before this, was saying that PSVR, their original PSVR estimates were 2.6 million by the end of the year. Now it's 750,000. It's like there's something amiss here. I don't have enough data or information or insight because I don't have the data specifically. Like, I'm not a Pactor where I get all the MPD data like we used to at IGN and stuff like that, where you can see the numbers to the most granular 10th of the fucking degree. But, I feel like it's not only the over sequelization of things that don't need sequels. I mean, I'm of the mind that Watch Dogs maybe didn't need a sequel. I'm of the mind that like you have to make new IP, and then they are, Steep just came out, so Ubisoft is investing in new IP, and I appreciate that. And people are enjoying these games nonetheless, but the chatter about all of these games is actually very low. And people are like, well, you're missing out on the communities, or you're not. And I'm like, no. I'm in the center of all of this stuff on Twitter and all of these kinds of things. People tweeting at me. I know what people are playing because they tweet at me and ask me why they're not playing these games. I get a handful of things that maybe about Watch Dogs and Dishonored, maybe. And the only reason I was getting so much about Infinite Warfare is because I was talking about it. So
yeah, Dishonored we mentioned on the show. That's why it comes up. P.S. I love you. People have been talking about.
Now Dishonored's on the list of games I want to play this fall. Yeah. I'm actually quite intrigued by it, and I maybe go back and play the original as well because I never beat it. But
I think the problem here, right, is the fact that AAA development is for so long has been that if you want to make a AAA game, you need to make a sequel, you need to make a universe, you need to make a thing,
franchise.
And that I think that you read the tea leaves looking back on Watch Dogs 1, on Titanfall 1. All right, Titanfall 1 underperformed because it was only on Xbox One and it didn't have a multiplayer. We'll fix that with this one. Watch Dogs 1 underperformed because nobody liked the hacking and the character was a bitch. We'll fix that way, thinking that audiences are going to be coming back ready to go. And I think if you look at the spectrum and what's changed over those years, right, is the same thing we all talk about in our lives and what we talk about on the Game Over Greggy show so much, is that there are a million distractions. Like, yeah, sure, maybe somebody did give Titanfall 1 a chance, and when they were talking about Titanfall 1, they were like, man, I would have played this. I would have stuck around longer if it had a single player, or if it had this, that, the other. But by the time you get here, now on top of that person being older, having kids, just being in high school, we'll say, there is... But man, Netflix is delivering with Black Mirror, and man, I want to watch this movie, and oh my God, what's happening in comics, or there's this book I need to read. It's worse than ever, not to mention just looking at your social media as to what are you going to take the shots on and what are you going to bet on. So even the horses that get bet on every year of Call of Duty or Battlefield are less than ever, are taking that dip because there's just more shit going on. There's more things to do. Yeah. VR being the same bet.
I think on the other side of that too is the fact that, all right, even if all these things are underperforming, I think that all these games and these AAA franchises have reached a point that unless it is a ridiculous success, it's underperforming because things got so high in the last couple of years because of things like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto and Pokemon Sun and Moon. Shout out to y'all motherfuckers killing shit. That I think that it's causing the problems of these games that years ago, you look at these numbers and you would have been like, oh shit.
Holy shit.
They did great.
Yeah.
But now just video games are in a different place. So not only are there more distractions, but in order to be a success story, you need to destroy everything.
And and it's not even distractions outside of, on the outside walls of video games. It's inside of video games, right? When you are, somebody's just going to, all they want to play is League. All they want to, they have their Call of Duty now. They just want to play the multiplayer. They don't want to get out necessarily and try all these different things and do all these different things, especially when they know they'll be on sale later on. You can pick them up down the road and not worry about it. And when it is, man, Watch Dogs is a blast. Watch Dogs 2 is so much fun. The world's fun. The stories are fun. There's a million fun games. There's a million fun open world games. Is that really what it needs to be? Like, what do you need to do to make waves to get picked up and talked about now? You look at something like Inside, right? Like, that's making it. Uncharted's final Uncharted and is like, top of the AAA spectrum.
Yeah, but I think that even there, though, it's like, all right, cool, those are successes, but it's not like Uncharted is selling in the same way that a Call of Duty would sell or whatever. So like the bar of success there is different, right? And inside, very different. So what even like back in the day, sequels were the thing, like especially the number 2. The number 1 game comes out, does well, typically, then the number 2 one's going to do better. What is that kind of hit now? Like what is the game industry kind of holding on to?
Well, I think that, the unfortunate thing we can't answer the question because, I was thinking, I'm like, well, is it possible Bethesda is happy with Arcane in terms of the way Dishonored 2 did? Because Dishonored 2 is certainly a critical darling, and it's not up to Arcane to sell the games, but these guys are so caught up in their own PR speak that they're never going to admit when a game bombs. So we don't really know what the barometer of success is. In other words, like, for all we know, Dishonored 2 will sell up 1.5 million copies or something, and Bethesda's like, that's great. We made X amount of money on it, and you guys can move on to Prey and be totally done with this franchise, and we're totally content and happy with it. Or Doom did so well that we can make up for the shortfall of our expectations for this particular game. But because I don't want to say dishonesty, but because there's so much shadowy samurai ninja shit going on, in the fucking gaming industry where you don't really know what the hell anyone thinks, and no one shoots straight because all these, a lot of these companies or their parent companies, for instance, ZeniMax or Take-Two or anything, and these are a lot of these companies are publicly traded. You don't want to like show your hand. We can't really answer the question because I don't, to your point, like 1.5, well, we were talking about PlayStation All-Stars, right? Because that kind of is in the people are talking about that again with the rumors, which I don't believe that it's going to be a PSX. That game sold 1 million copies and was that shut that studio down, and 1 million copies in
so much.
And 1 million copies in the NES era, SNES era, and a massive amount of copies sold. I mean, an absurd amount of copies sold. I mean, I can tell you the story about how when Naughty Dog made Rings of Power on Genesis, they sold, I think, something like 200,000 copies of the game, and that's all that were ever manufactured because EA's chip allotment went to Madden, so they couldn't give another go to the game. So that topped out at 200,000 was considered a great success so that they were able to make another game. 200,000 AAA games today, consider that was made by a small team of 10 people or so, but 200,000 would close any studio of any size if they sold that many copies. And so what I wonder is the common theme between the underperforming games, and if you even want to put Uncharted in there, you even want to put Inside in there, which I'm sure didn't do as well as Limbo, and if you want to put Call of Duty and all these games, the common theme between them is they're all good. That's the weird part about it. So it's not a quality barometer like it was in the early 80s where the thing started to collapse because everything sucked when Quaker Oats was making games and all this kind of shit. That's not like that. And it's not like the kind of middling A space that fell out, and that's where we were getting Dark Void, even though that was a Capcom game, or we were getting THQ games, roster. Yeah, exactly, like all that kind of shit, and that kind of stuff's gone too. Even though we got Deep Silver, I think fills that void now in their games. Homefront was fucking awful, for instance. So like those games still exist, but I'm curious about like what the barometer is by which things are judged, and since it can't be a critical, we know these games are good critically, but not commercially. We just don't have enough information to know like how this affects things moving forward, and if studios are going to be pulled off of IP or if studios are going to shut down. And
see, I think we do. I think it's people getting to the conclusion EA got to with Dead Space quicker. I think that is this whole tea leaves metaphor again, right? Oh well, we fixed everything people didn't like about Titanfall. Nope, we're done. You're done with Titanfall.
That's got to be the end.
And don't get us wrong, we loved it. We made action figures. We were stoked. We did all this gear and stuff. People aren't into it, and we don't have the chance to do another one. So work on your Star Wars game, right? Watch Dogs, same thing, where it's like, all right, cool. We went the opposite way. The critics loved it. This didn't do it, and it's not getting groundswell support in a way that like where I was talking about on PS I Love You with like Far Cry 3, where Far Cry 3 came out and nobody cared about it, and then all of a sudden reviews were hitting. People were talking, you're fucking up your game of the year if you're not putting this in there, and that small voice got a lot louder, and it happened.
And it was a great game.
And that's the thing, like the Watch Dogs community, which I'm a part of and on Reddit and stuff, is active, and we're all talking, but it's not making waves, right? Like it's the same thing of what you're talking about, where I'll get tweets of people saying, hey man, I picked up Watch Dogs because of you. But it's not like when we fucking talk about Taco Master, which is a super easy sell because it's cheap and short. This is something people know they need to commit to, and they're like, oh, that sounds cool, but I'm playing a million other things. I don't need to worry about it.
I think that might be the crux, right? And to your point about League of Legends or these MOBAs or what we've talked about in the past, where like, well, Battleborn, of course Battleborn was going to fail because Evolve failed and for the same reasons that these games require time and space, and you don't have time or space in AAA gaming unless you are Overwatch or unless you're Call of Duty, which is even falling apart, and
Destiny. And now you see even the Division getting a revival of people being like, oh man, this patch actually fixed what I don't like about it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. To that point, Ubisoft said that the Division numbers are up to where they were at launch. That's incredible, and that's the second game they've done that to in a year. And so they Siege being the other one, so they clearly understand those things. I just don't think we have enough data about like what the trends are moving forward. I think anyone who thinks Titanfall is going to continue is delusional. First of all, I think that's like one of those things where people are like, well, it sold well enough, and it was number 9 on the list with only 3 days. And I'm like, it's over, like.
Yeah, you already saw them starting to back off that statement, right? Like, we're committed to what, and then I was like, we'll see what's going to happen.
See, well, what I wonder with that though is going back to what you're talking about with Arcane. Like, I wonder if we're just at a point where games are doing good enough to make a profit, keep the teams running, and if they're doing critically well, that makes the whole team look good, and that just creates a goodwill with games to be able to fund, whatever, NBA 2K17 that is going to make money.
See, I would make that argument when you're talking about Ubisoft and like Ubi Arts and the war game Valiant Hearts, you know what I mean? Like those ones going on to, okay, you're doing well enough. Keep making cool shit like that. I think that's where it would be now, is these honest conversations with people of like, man, there was a hardcore group that loved Dishonored, and so we took a chance hoping that they would tell their friends and there'd be a great Dishonored 2 swell, and there wasn't. It was a great game. You guys are talented. What else do you want to make? Because if it can be a point of where we can just keep moving, all right, let's, what is your next thing? How committed are they to that franchise too? Of just being like, all right, that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I wonder what that means though, because does that just mean everybody makes indie 2D platformers or RPGs?
No, I think
because that started Rubber Band too.
I know, because that's the problem is I feel like we're at a place where all of these genres that are popular now, the open world RPGs, the shooters, the indie retro games, it's just like that is what it is. So
there's saturation.
A lot of people stop doing that because Call of Duty wins, or whoever wins, then it's like, then
it's
what
not
else
even,
is
I don't
there?
even think it's saying, hey, stop doing what you're doing. I think it's saying, we've taken the temperature of the video game buying public, and they don't care about Dishonored, but they know it's good. So what's your other stealthy, weird idea you want to make? Okay, great. Go make that. For 2 years, you need to say, hey, these people made the critically acclaimed Dishonored. And then you have that Dishonored fan base. But like, what's my thing with Dishonored, right? Is like, it's like, I look at it, like I played the first one for a little bit and I was like, I don't like this setting. Again, it's too almost medievally or like, fucking grimy. Like, yeah, exactly. Like London grimy. Like if they were to come out and like, hey, it's all this different shit in an environment I cared about with a story I cared about, I'd be like, oh, cool. Like this interests me, right? It's similar with Final Fantasy. Oh, they're driving cars and being normal people? That sounds really cool. Like I'm interested in knowing more about that game, and maybe it pans out that I do it. I think it's just taking teams and, all right, cool. We gave you this world and you tried it twice and that was great. Let's do something else. Let's take everything you've learned and what you know, and like, you know what I mean? Like you look at the team that made Watch Dogs and then Watch Dogs 2, like clearly, okay, cool, fuck. Fun protagonists and fun gameplay and fun open world. That's great. What do we do next? Maybe, people still don't seem to be sold on. They want to go hack things. And what is the biggest thing you see in these comments? That it's weird to be a hacker fighting for social justice, but running around shotgunning everything. And I'm sure they're saying you don't need to play it. But Greg's saying he doesn't play it, that he sits on his laptop and hacks every building and never shoots somebody. Okay, let's make a game where either you run around and shoot people or you can't do that. Let's, let's start to funnel this into like, what can we learn and change, but get away from it, right?
Yeah.
Get away from the title and the franchise and the baggage people have.
I think you're probably right, but I think it's even simpler. I'm heartened by what I think is happening, which I think people are tired of sequels. And like in the game space where it's like people liked Dishonored. That was a big game, The fact that Dishonored 2, Dishonored wasn't some small release when it came out in 2012 or whatever it was. People loved that game. And what I'm wondering is like the sequel has to be the right sequel, but not everything needs a sequel. And I'm kind of heartened by that because that's clearly part of it. That's definitely part of it because all of these games are underperforming, all of them.
Yeah.
And they're all sequels. So part of it, I think, is like people might have a subconscious yearning for something new. And you could have just called Watch Dogs 2 something else, and it's got components from the same team, whatever, to your point. And I think that people are it's kind of a franchise fatigue happening very soon. And so instead of taking 3 games for them to realize that they should abandon Dead Space, it takes them 2 games to realize they should abandon Titanfall. And perhaps we can get to a space where, and I know it's not rational from a business standpoint to develop an IP only to abandon it. I know that that's not something that you want to do, and it doesn't make sense. But it seems like it actually might make more sense now, because when you're looking around, there are actually more losers than there are winners.
And that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It doesn't make business sense for an IP, right? It doesn't. Use it as a piece of art. That not everything needs to be an action figure and a novelization and a fucking cup and a bag and all this other nerd shit that we love for certain things but don't fucking touch for other things, right? Like I don't. When Titanfall sent over that giant crate full of Titanfall crap. It's like, all right, cool. But like, I would never go buy an action figure for the character I am, or even for the Titan. But I mean, some people.
Sure who my character was in Titanfall.
Exactly, it was Matt Mercer. I don't know. I see him on Critical Role. Don't treat it as an IP. Treat it as this is our game, and it's okay to be a game, and it's also okay to react after the fact to that. And that's what I'm so fascinated with Horizon, where I know we've talked about it before, where you think that's like could be Sony's next like face of PlayStation or whatever. And it's scary to hear them talk about it where they say that they think that and they're already working on all these different things. And it's like, I don't know if that's the climate we're in anymore. I don't know if it is going to be that you're going to see people swell behind something to the point that they want everything with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're saying is ideal. You know, that sounds awesome and like good for the art and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that where we're heading is somewhere close to what Colin's saying about the sequel thing. The difference being that I think people are tired of sequels, but now people want universes, the MCU style stuff. And I think that with Marvel games and Star Wars games about to be the next 10 years of our life, like I think that that's the type of thing that's going to happen. So instead of it being Dishonored 2, it's going to be Star Wars where it's like, all right, cool, you can, or Marvel where it's like, yeah, you can easily just be like, oh, it's another Star Wars game. But Star Wars can have 10 different genres of games. Like you can take the Watch Dogs hacking stuff and make that work in that universe and have Star Wars be the thing that sells instead of Watch Dogs or whatever. And same thing with Marvel or whatever else it is. I think that we might start seeing games even when it's not those giant IP franchises. Like instead of it being Dishonored 2, have it be just Dishonored subtitle. You know, I think that like that type of stuff could allow just universes to be created, and it's not a sequel, it's another game similar to the game that you liked.
Sure.
I think that there's a ubiquity to the way things are going down in the last 18 months or so that I think you're probably right, and I think Greg's right, and I think I'm right. I think that there's a pie chart of all of these things that it's like a maelstrom. It's just this unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, depending on how you look at it, series of things that are happening at the same time. Games as services, games with stickiness where people play them for thousands of hours. People still play Destiny every day. You know, like Destiny came out when we were at IGN. That was a long time ago. People still play the original Destiny.
People still play Minecraft
every day. People love Minecraft. And the more that these, like if 2 of those games happen a year, then you're just peeling off potential consumers of other games because I'm not above it. There could be a game that comes out one day where I'm like, fuck this shit. I mean, Civilization was that game. Civilization 5 was that game for me. I played that game forever. You know, so at the sake of a lot of things, I eventually moved away because I like to play other games. But man, if Konami was one day like, we're going to release a new fucking Castlevania map every 2 weeks forever in the Symphony of the Night style, I'd be like, see, games, like I'm cool because this is perfect for me. And I think it goes back to also personal taste where it's like, I want sequels for very specific games that I think are perfect. And everything else can go away. The problem is that I don't have the objective knowledge to know what is perfect, only the subjective knowledge of what I think is perfect. And so I think what you're going to have moving forward is a lot more failures. And I think a lot of the failures, unfortunately, maybe for Horizon, probably not because Sony players love proprietary games, but open world games. This is a problem. This is going to be a major problem. I'm telling you right now, in a year or two, people are going to go ahead and be like, enough with the fucking open world games already, because they are reactionary games going back to Fallout 3 and New Vegas and Mass Effect to an extent with the choices and all.
Sure.
That like eventually, and that's why I like games like Inside, because they're just like, we're making a game.
Yeah.
That we want to make, and it took us forever to make it.
And see, this is what's another interesting wrinkle to all this is what you're seeing Disney do with their properties, which is go after Insomniac, which is go after Respawn, which is go after, okay, cool,
Telltale.
like we're going to give you this thing to make a game with. And Telltale's a great example, right? Because every Telltale game is the same for the, it's nuts and bolts. And so when they put out Wolf Among Us, and no one really, Wolf Among Us is like art for art's sake, you assume, right? Hey, who loves Fables? Well, a lot of people, but I don't know if they want to go play the game. And then people play the game, and then they're like, where's Wolf Among Us 2? And it's like, it probably didn't sell that well. The fact that there's season 3 of The Walking Dead, right? And Troy and I just did an episode of Batman. Everybody's talking about Batman, and I'm talking about on the episode as if season 2 is a foregone conclusion because you assume it is. It's Batman. Why would you go back to this thing that underperformed? You take these IPs and put them on there, and when you start doing that, that's what's going to be interesting to see. Insomniac. Not that I'm saying, God, Ratchet and Clank was so fucking good, and it sold really, really well. So this isn't like doom and gloom, but studios picking up things. Yeah, open world's the craze, but we know we're going to burn people out unless we put it Star Wars open world or Spider-Man open world. And you get to make these games up here, like Game Dev Story, that make you the money. But then down here, you get to go make an inside or a AAA game that you really are passionate about and you want to go make.
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting times. Let us know what you think in the comments below.
And if you're in your car listening to this on like an MP3, just yell out the window. We'll hear.
Yeah.
Hey, you! Well, Tim, interesting question. I'll tell you what Oh, God!
Next topic is Nintendo and Universal Studios. Here's the deal. Nintendo-themed areas are coming to Universal Studios Japan, Universal Orlando Resort, and Universal Studios Hollywood. It's close to us. These will be expansive, immersive, and interactive. They will be highly themed and authentic environments filled with multiple attractions, shops, and restaurants. Guests will feel as if they're playing inside their favorite video games. This time, in real life.
Whoa!
There'll be something for everyone, regardless of their age or gaming experience level. Planning and creative work on these areas is well underway, and they will open separately over the next couple years. So we've heard about this a long time ago. I think last year was when they first kind of announced it. Now this is kind of just a re-announcement. We saw Miyamoto chilling. He did a video. He was talking about all this stuff. There's a bunch of like real life Koopa shells and shit around him. And I'm like, hell yeah, I am so into this.
This is perfect for you.
This
you
is
love
perfect
theme parks and you love Nintendo.
Love Disneyland. Love Nintendo. Nintendo Land, not the Wii U game. Sounds like an amazing idea.
Yeah.
I've never been to a Universal Studios, which is a little heartbreaking because it sounds like it would be fantastic. There was a Fast and Furious ride.
Yeah.
I'm going to just pretend that it's not Universal Studios, and we're just talking about Nintendo Land. Pretend Nintendo's doing a Disneyland style thing. I want to talk to you guys because I'm sure you're the perfect audience for this. What rides should there be?
Oh, see, I was way more hung up on the restaurants.
Nintendo Land, whatever. The whole experience. I mean, because Disneyland, there's shows, there's restaurants, there's shops, there's rides, there's experiences, there's like video games in it and arcades and stuff like that. What does this look like?
I can't wait for like the incredibly racially insensitive like Mario's Mamma Mia pizza place or whatever, some Italian food restaurant. Mario out there with a big bowl of spaghetti eating there, and all the food's really subpar like at Disneyland.
Well, so first of all, I think that it's super. You know, I used to actually love theme parks. I don't go as an adult anymore, but I used to love them, and I would totally go to this. I think that this is like actually right up my alley because I do love Nintendo. And old Nintendo IP and these Nintendo characters in the Nintendo worlds, as it were. And I like that they're doing it with Universal. I think my first instinct when I read this last year and then saw it kind of pop up again was like, why they have the capital and the pull to just do their own parks. So why are they doing it on their own? And I'm like, no, it's kind of good to hedge your bet with someone else.
I knows it all the things,
and I don't know that Nintendo has the draw to do it on our own.
And in addition to that, I think like we've seen things like with Legoland where it's just like, yeah, Lego could totally do it by itself. It's like, they probably should have just partnered with someone else.
Yeah, I think it just gets you more people. I mean, because I think isn't Universal also doing like Harry Potter shit?
Yeah, like Harry Potter.
So now it's like this whole amalgamation of shit.
Simpsons are there. You're bringing in different people, and then they see that.
Yeah, it's like something for everyone in the family.
Maybe I'll buy that Switch.
So I think that's a pretty cool. As far as rides are concerned, I mean, what I hope and I doubt will happen, but what I think would be cool is to try to leverage as much IP as possible. And I think it would be cool to, you want to focus on Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong and whatever else, but I think it would be cool to have, and I'm not saying just because I love it, but it would be cool to have ice climbers or something, balloon fight. Like, how could you do like ingenious things with this that make these IP relevant? And then could you garner some sort of market data about how these things do in the park to see if they're IP that might live again in some sort of limited way? And so I think that this should be interesting. At the very least, interesting from a marketing perspective for Nintendo to see, well, of course Mario is going to do well, but it can't all be Mario and it can't all be Zelda. And so do you have something real niche for Earthbound fans? Do you do like a Metroid ride? Do you do like, and then what does that mean for people? And does that turn people off? Because, a lot of people, everyone knows Mario and all that kind of stuff. But what I fear is that it's basically going to be Mario Land. And that's the one thing that I think would be super fucking lame.
So the problem with it is because it's universal, there is limited space and stuff. So yeah, it probably is just going to be the greatest hits of it. But again, let's just live in an imaginary world for a second. This is the Disneyland equivalent. What I like about Disneyland is, yeah, of course you get the kind of the tentpole stuff, but then you get the Bugs Life area where it's just like Bugs Life is not relevant at all. It is the Earthbound of the Disney cinematic universe. So I do think that there would be cool things like that, because an ice climber ride where you're like, it's like an actual mountain climbing thing that could be freaking cool, like an endless mountain climbing thing and seeing like how far you can get. Because like the thing about Disneyland is they have the rides that are like the Buzz Lightyear game or the Toy Story Mania where it's like you get the guns and you have to sit there and like
see, that's the one I was thinking for Metroid.
You compete against each other. Well, for Metroid, what I'm thinking is Star Tours. Star Tours is like the 4D
Yeah,
ride
yeah,
where you
yeah.
have it's
It
the
blows
3D
the
screen
air in
and
your
stuff.
face.
Blows air, all that stuff going on, and you're in like a ship with a group of people, and you're all experiencing it once, like going through a trip. I think that'd be awesome. Being in Samus's ship, flying around and like landing on planets and shit going on in front of you. Be fucking dope.
Now, I know the store already is going to sell the Mario cap,
Mhm.
and you could like get your name on the back of it, like Disney ears, right?
Yeah.
If they want to go the extra mile and do it for nerds like us, Lakitu hat. You put it on, it's the little cloud, and then he's sitting up there with a camera. Come on.
I like it. What I want is
I don't hate it.
I want the hub.
I know you don't need it, Colin. But
I know. I said I don't hate it. I don't.
Oh, you don't hate it. I don't
I
need it.
definitely don't need it.
But like Disneyland, the center of it is the castle. I think that is apt here as well. I want the Mario 64 Peach. I want a remake of the area, the trees with the like circle ass,
Sure.
branches and shit.
Now, do you think? But at some point, somebody's got to step up and be like, "Are we copying Disney too much?" Do
no one does.
No. Okay. Nobody's gonna do that.
If you're doing it right, you're doing it right. Just let's not PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale.
All right.
this.
Let's not get there.
Let's fucking do this.
Yeah,
All right.
okay. All right. So we're in.
I want Mario Kart. I want
Of
Mario
course you do.
Kart to be an experience where you sit in the thing and you like go through kind of like a storybook ride that they have where like it takes you through the story
Okay.
of the
Okay.
things, but mixed with the Cars Land ride that they have where it takes you through the whole story of cars, but it ends with this fucking awesome race where
Do you race it? Are you in control?
you're not in control, but there's two cars next to each other and it's like it randomizes who wins.
Nice.
It's like it's a fun thing.
Okay.
But I would want it to go through multiple different like tracks and
Ends on
like,
Rainbow
each
Road.
room and ends
And
on
you're like
Rainbow
coming
fucking
off
Road.
on you're like,
And,
you feel like you're gonna fall off the side and then you go.
it would be awesome. It'd be
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah.
And I feel like I'd imagine that to be a lot of practical stuff in rooms, and each room is a different course. And then the last room would just be like fucking LED video wall all the way around Rainbow Road and just fucking turtle shells and shit flying everywhere.
Yeah. It'd be cool if there was some ways, like what you're talking about, randomizing it. If there was a way of like the randomization is that as you're going, you drive through the question mark blocks, and then you randomly get a weapon that you have a big button to hit. It's like you shoot a red shell or you shoot, ink or whatever.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
We should get hired.
Speaking of ink,
God.
Splatoon water
Yeah,
park.
Here we go. Oh, okay.
Okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
You need the little water park section like Great America has at the Boomerang Bay they have.
Wave race. Should be the
Oh
one.
yeah, see, Wave Race could be a like very small ride in the corner of the Splatoon water park area. Obviously, roller coasters are an important, easy answer to a lot of things. So my first thought was Star Fox, but I think there's two very clear, easy answers. One, every theme park has the two different types of roller coasters. There's the high tech, super crazy fast one,
And the old
and
rickety
then
ones?
there's the old school rickety one. Old school rickety one, Donkey Kong mine carts.
Ah, that's
Duh.
really good.
It happens.
That's
It
really
has to
good.
happen. Crazy fast one. As much as I want to give it to Star Fox, gotta give it to F-Zero.
Yeah.
You just got to.
That is good.
That'd be good.
Another important part of theme parks, bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want, this is again, now stick with me because there's two different ways you can go with this one. But this is again one of those little touches where you're like, they built this for us. In the urinals, I want, how some people in the urinals, they put like the B on it and you're supposed to aim at the B. Give me a little Mr. Game & Watch right there. Now, and if it's one of those urinal games where you pee on it, right? And then you play a game, even better.
A Game & Watch game?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I want some Super Mario branded plungers everywhere in the bathrooms.
Okay.
'Cause why the fuck not?
We do need a lot of pipes. A lot of the
There-
green,
lots
the
of pipes.
green pipes,
Lots
and
of
things
pipes.
coming in and out of them.
You know what they should do? So the hub is the castle in the center, and then as you go to each land or world or whatever,
Yeah.
the tunnels are like big pipes that you walk through.
Sure, that's
To go-
awesome.
to go-
Great
to
idea.
go through
And
there.
you-
Yeah. Oh,
help
yeah.
me out now, Mr. Disneyland, Mr. Star Trek Wars man. When Captain Kirk's swinging his saber at Disneyland, his lightsaber, his light sword, is they got a thing where that people do that with? Are people? Because like I'm trying to think of, we haven't talked about a good Zelda
What is
ride.
the question?
Is there at Disneyland a lightsaber anything for people to do and play with,
Yes.
other than just the toys? Like
There is a kid, there's a Jedi Academy where they, like this Mace Windu wannabe comes
Yeah.
out and teaches the kids how to be a Jedi, and then they come and they fight Darth Vader.
so that's where we have Tingle come out and teach kids how to use the Master Sword.
I don't know
Tingle
about
always
Tingle.
did teach us how to use the Master Swords.
Yeah. I want Tingle to be a shopkeeper. I feel
Okay,
like that,
so then Link comes out and teaches us how to use it.
That probably
And
makes
then
a
at
little
the
more
end,
sense.
And then at the end, Ganondorf comes out and all the kids have to vanquish him.
See, for Zelda, I'm thinking again the storybook ride, like the Winnie the Pooh ride or the Little Mermaid ride, and or Snow White.
Sure.
All the ones where you just kind of like going room to room getting the story. But each room there can be, and the problem with this is this starts holding up lines and shit. So I need to think of a clever way to like make sure that things happen.
Keep things going.
But each room kind of has like a puzzle. Like you're in each room's a different temple. You got the people have to work together to figure out.
Well,
something
Zelda escape rooms
to
could
move
be
you-
something you do there. Not
Yes.
not
Yes.
a ride per se, but
but
something
more
you
of an
do.
experience.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
do that stuff there.
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Disneyland.
Now we haven't. What are we doing for Animal Crossing? What about Tom Nook? Does he have his
Animal
own shop?
Crossing is going to be like Small World, which is the ride no one actually gives a fuck about.
Sure.
But it has to be there.
Sure. Okay.
You know?
Well, for Zelda, I was thinking something with Epona would be cool, like something with horses for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there could be Lon Lon Ranch.
Yeah,
Could be
Lon,
over
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Petting zoo. People like
Yeah,
that. But the big question I have is Yoshi. What are we doing with him?
Yosh.
You don't have. You're not selling turkey legs. You're selling Yoshi legs.
But he's just one dinosaur.
Oh, you know there are all these multicolored Yoshis
Oh,
running around
man.
doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any good
It's not
Yoshi.
a terrible idea, actually.
Yoshi.
I'm not going to hate on it.
There's no. We're brainstorming here. There's no bad ideas.
No bad ideas. Luigi's Haunted Mansion. It's easy.
There you go.
But, you know, it's
Is it Tower of Terror style haunted?
No,
Thank
because
you.
the Tower of Terror is Bowser's castle. Now hear me out. You're going because the Tower of Terror really is only one ride part.
an
The rest of
elevator.
it's kind of you're walking through the experience. Like the line is part of
Sure.
many Disneyland rides. The line is part of the ride. So I imagine Bowser's castle very atmospheric, a lot of fire, a lot of Bowser's castle-y stuff.
Sure.
But then you get in
Lava.
the end, the Thwomp Drop.
Ah.
I'm excited about that.
Okay. That was a
feel
good
like
one.
that could be
That
good.
was a good one.
What else do I got?
What's Wario up to?
I don't know.
Are we not doing anything?
Fuck Wario.
Is there a Mario
I can't
Party
stand Wario.
multiplayer ride thing we're doing where people
Whoa.
are walking around a board?
What? Oh, okay. So here's what it is. So Disneyland does they're like Tron nights in California Adventure, where you go and it's a fucking rave, like a Daft Punk style rave.
Sure.
Then now it's like, and then for a while it was Alice in Wonderland, like Mad Tea-Hatter Party or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it is. At night it turns into fucking Mario Party, and that's when adults can buy alcohol. And
Oh,
it's
snap. I want to go to the Mario
because
Party.
that's like one of the only places in Disneyland that you can buy
yeah.
alcohol.
The
It's not even
booze.
Disneyland; it's California Adventure. But yeah, so that's what it'd be. Mario Party.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Good.
That's fantastic.
They should sell alcohol at Disneyland. I'd like to see some upset dads drinking at 2 in the
Fucking
afternoon.
stop crying.
because
Get on
of
the ride.
lines and all this
Yeah.
stuff. They're leaving they're leaving both revenue and
Lawsuits.
lawsuits.
So what they
and
what,
lawsuits
what
on the
they
table.
do with it though is so it's in alcohol is only in California Adventure. Everyone's trying to go to Disneyland, so they're trying to upsell you on that park hopper to get the people to go over, drink over there. Only place in Disneyland you can get alcohol, Club 33.
Right.
So whenever we go, we get fucked up. It's fantastic. What else we got here? See, I don't like. I want paintings that I can jump into, but I don't know how to make that happen. There has to be a possibility. We have the technology.
Virtual reality room kind of thing where it looks like it's coming right at you and falls on you and you're in
See,
it.
Okay, that's what it is. When in the hub castle, right? You go in, and I want it to be like a walking thing where you walk through, kind of like the animation studio at Disneyland, where it's like a history of Disney. I want the history of Mario. You go through, and each room is a different Mario game. And you get to the Mario Galaxy room, everything's fucking upside down and shit. There's like shit, so you feel like you're lost. What, Greg? What?
I'm sorry. I want to help. I just got a great one.
Go.
Just a room you walk into and try to knock out Mike Tyson.
Mr. Dream.
He's just sitting there like, oh, shit.
Go Punch Out one would be cool too. Something to do with.
Punch Out, yeah. I don't know what you do. I feel like that would just be like a fun thing people can play. Like there's just like a
Yeah,
punch
yeah,
bag
yeah.
somewhere.
Pikmin.
Yeah, what would Pikmin do?
I was trying to figure out. That's a.
I don't know.
That seems
That's
like a
kid
little
one.
kid one.
That's next to Lon Lon Ranch.
That's something you can sell though. You can sell them Pikmin.
Oh, you can. You can sell
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
So the one franchise that we're not naming yet, Pokemon.
Oh,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Pokemon deserves its own park. Pokemon could be like the California Adventure of this thing, where it's like you go there, there's a whole bunch of different shit. The thing they need, Pokemon Snap. I want, similar to the Toy Story Buzz Lightyear stuff, you're in this game, screens all around you. There's Pokemon, you gotta take pictures of these motherfuckers.
Nice. See, here's what I was gonna go a different direction with it, but yours, I think we can combine ideas here and make a lot of money.
Okay.
There is an augmented reality game within the park called Pokemon Snap. And so when you come in, you for the day for $14 rent out you buy the camera thing you got to carry around with you. And then they're all over the place. You got to find them. And then based on however many it's like a raffle ticket where you come back and you're like, I caught 18 and they're like, oh, well, you can get anything from this prize category. And I caught 30, then anything from this thing.
I mean,
Charged by the hour. I didn't even charge that one thing.
it's just Pokemon Go.
Yeah,
Fuck
exactly. It's
Snap.
Pokemon Go, but something
Just
you can
Pokemon
only
Go,
do there.
but like crazy advanced.
Exactly.
There.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Maybe even using like a proprietary device that they give you.
That's what I'm saying. You have to rent that by the hour.
Holy
That's how you, in that way you can keep it coming, keep going.
Making a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn, that's real
You're welcome,
smart.
Mr. Nintendo.
That's real smart.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, what are we going to call the churros? Because the churros have to have some funny name, too. It can't be Yoshi Poops. He can't do it. I know you're thinking about it. Dye him green.
But it's not gonna work.
It can't be Yoshi Poops. We got to think of something else.
oh man.
Oh,
Greg.
man, I love making theme parks. It turns
Yeah.
out. If only someone made a video game about this.
I feel like the fireworks shows would be super dope.
Oh yeah.
Just like Disneyland, and very celebratory. Lots of orchestral music from all your favorite franchises. I don't know what Smash Bros would be. I don't know if it is really
too violent.
necessary.
Too violent. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we missing here? We're missing Kirby. Kirby needs.
Oh, shit.
Kirby needs something.
Kirby should be like, there's like a chill room. You go sit in the giant Kirby beanbags. And
Get stoned.
the hemp tent.
Kirby could have his restaurant. You know.
Oh,
Little
nobody
Chef
wants
Kirby.
to go eat fat
The
stuff.
king has to be in
Cooking
there.
Mama has to have her own restaurant. Or she wasn't a Nintendo property, though, was she? She was just a
That was-
DS game that's super
That
popular.
was Majesco, I want to say.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Mario has to have a restaurant, obviously.
Yeah.
Again, very racist Italian.
What are we missing though? Like with Mario, we haven't named a Mario ride. Like Mario ride.
He's everywhere.
Mario Kart. You can do something with Mario
That's
Kart.
what we're
Mario
talking
Kart.
about.
Oh,
We did
okay,
Mario Kart. We did
Well,
Mario Party
that-
as a night.
That counts though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would think
That's
so.
a Mario ride.
I'm talking more traditional. I don't even know though.
I mean, there's gonna be like fucking stand up to go get your photo taken in front of the POW block and everything else.
See, Star Fox is a hard one because if it's not a roller coaster, then what is it? It could be a roller coaster in the style of like Space Mountain, like when Space Mountain does the Star Wars thing, where it's pitch black everywhere, but there's like video screens, so you do see stuff happening. It's like you hear. Actually, that's pretty fucking cool. I like that.
I never saw this painting before. It's pretty cool.
Can we have? It's either a restaurant where he serves you, but I think it's too tough, or you know how you have to be like this tall to ride that ride. Rob the Robot is the guy that's telling you how tall you have to be, or you have a restaurant that is run by Rob the Robots that drive. Well, they're not run by, but I mean they're the waiters.
Yeah. Okay.
You punch things in on your touchscreen over there that looks. You have these 3DS looking touchscreens. You punch in what you want to eat. No waiters, and then Rob rolls up and gives it to you.
Okay. I like that.
They can't call him Yoshi Poops.
What are we missing? What franchises are we missing? I don't want to move on until we make sure that we've exhausted this.
Paperboy.
Cool hand.
I'm just thinking of the Smash Bros roster, trying to go through Fire Emblem, but like that's boring as hell. There could be like a fucking bullshit ass Renaissance show.
There you go. Sure.
I mean, there's a
nobody
lot
cares
of
about.
random IP that we haven't mentioned. But I think that
We covered the big ones.
I mean I think those are all the big ones, and even some not so big ones. I'm trying to think too. I mean, Mario Golf would be cool if you could just have like a golf course for parents or whatever that like or dads that can go play
Smart.
golf.
Oh, that's smart. I mean, there could just be like a Mario Sports. Like that could also be. See,
Sure.
now we're moving from
Mario-
Disneyland to Disney World. Like
Mario
there's
Sports
whole separate
Complex.
things. There's the Mario Sports Arena.
This could be an easy place too, where you get Animal Crossing in. You have like really nice cabins themed after Animal Crossing that people get to stay in.
I feel like Animal Crossing could just be it'd be like Toontown. You know, like there's just like a lot of shit you can see.
Sure.
Dusty old towns that have been abandoned for years, and then you turn on your GameCube and it's still there somehow.
There they
Everyone's
are.
still-
Why'd you let all these weeds grow?
I mean, I think we've covered most of it.
I feel good about this. Kind of funny is Nintendo Land.
we
Which
still got to figure out the Yoshi poop conundrum, but
yeah,
I just
how
gotta, the
Yoshi's
churros
involved.
can't just be called churros. They got to be something else. What I'm saying.
I feel like Yoshi deserves,
The turkey leg.
but like something better than that. You know, I just don't know what. But good for you, Yosh. Do you?
They sell
Figure it
bikes that look like Yoshi. You can ride. You could be like, okay, yeah. So like, you know the Dumbo ride with the elephants. Have the Yoshis on there,
And every time you go, oh man! All right, cool. I'm into that. I'm into it. Let us know what rides we should add to our Nintendo.
in the
Land.
comments below, or
the
shout it out your window.
Final topic, as always, brought to you by you over at the Kind of Funny forums. You can go to kindoffunny.com/for Gamescast topic.
Damn! Wow. I was like, somebody's like hitting their computer thinking it's stuck.
to leave your request. Just like Will the Thrill 80 said. I'm sorry, guys. Life is hard.
It's Yoshi poops.
I just want to go to Nintendo Land. Resident Evil 7. What's up with it?
Well, people played it. I saw that someone, I want to say Mike Mahardy or something who's from GameSpot, tweeted out that he had played 4 hours of it. I'm hearing that it's very similar to it feels like remake and
yeah, it's supposed to be first person Resident Evil, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I'm super stoked about it. I know Greg had some conjecture that he thinks it's going to get delayed.
I still see a delay coming.
I don't. I think it's going to come out.
I think trouble's afoot.
But I actually thought it was half and half until the preview coverage is coming out. It seems like they're going to hit the January date. I'm super fucking stoked about it. I can't wait to play it in VR. I think that hopefully if it's good, it'll be the realization of what VR can possibly do. And so I'm bullish on it, and I really think Capcom seems to have learned some lessons. Like they're getting better, and they're getting a little more deliberate. I know some people were disappointed with Street Fighter V, but they seem to be a little bit more of a reflective company right now, and I think they understand no one likes Resident Evil 6. So I think that they're just, again, it's like Episode 7 in Star Wars. I think it's going to be an overcompensation, but it's going to be familiar, and people are going to like it. So
I wish it the best. I think I don't think it's gonna work out well in VR. I don't think people will be able to, when I say I don't think they'll be able to play the whole game in VR, I mean you will be, but I think people are gonna be popping this thing off left and right because they're getting car sick.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm very excited for it. I do think it could get delayed. The previews coming out today make me think a little differently.
That's a huge hole in my story. Because part of it was just the fact that I don't think we're hearing enough about a game that's supposed to be out in January.
Exactly. But still, I also don't think it's necessarily enough that it's not going to get at least a little bit of a delay. Like
sure.
I can see this coming out in March, for example.
I'm going to play it at PSX before our panel. So
cool.
I'm going to be able to talk about it there and see if I was wrong.
Yeah, but in addition to the GameSpot article that I read, there was also an IGN one, and they seem to be very congruent with each other in the sense of it seems similar to the Final Fantasy 15 preview that happened about a month ago, where it's like, oh shit, this could actually be great. People seem to be really high on it, which excites me. I really wonder how long the game is and how much of an experience it is, because something like this seems to be a mix of Resident Evil 1 and PT, and I don't necessarily know how long I need a PT experience to be. You know, I feel like this could be an extremely, extremely solid 6 to 7 hour game, but I feel like it can get a little bit too long in the tooth. Long in the tooth if it's in the more like 10 to 15 range.
Yeah.
But like I would much rather a shorter, more concise, more like scare-filled experience than something with a lot of backtracking and like weird bullshit. That that is what Resident Evil is, but I think it's not what Resident Evil needs to be.
Yeah, I think what you'll get is an 8 to 10 hour game with a lot of accoutrements that allow you to play the game again differently. So like difficulty level scaling, time runs, all that kind of stuff, and hopefully a degree of nonlinearity that kind of that Resident Evil doesn't necessarily ever have. I think Resident Evil 4 kind of had it in a way, but not pure nonlinearity, but things that don't need to happen or that you don't need to see. I like games where there's all this extraneous shit that adds to the story and the narrative and to the feeling of the game, maybe a day-night cycle and something like that, but that you can run through it pretty quickly too. So what I'm hoping is that it's a game that is, I don't want Resident Evil to be longer than 10 hours in any way, because I think it ruins the experience. It's unbelievable at that point. And I think one of the cool things about the old Resident Evil games was they were pretty believable in their own way. Silent Hill too. So So I think that's what you'll get. And that's why I'm confident that it's going to come out. And I actually think it's incumbent on Capcom to get this game out in January, because I think that if they wait any longer, it's not going to do as well. I think that they have to get it out on that date. And I don't want to say I don't know what the fuck's going on at Capcom, but I feel like they're going to get it out.
The previews are out today. I haven't seen them, and they're good. There you go. I think they'll like it.
Yeah, going back to our last a couple topics ago about sequels, like this is a perfect example of like calling it Resident Evil 7 is interesting to me, because I feel like that's kind of a misstep. Like it should have just been Resident Evil Biohazard. Like just like it is a soft reboot, whatever, because it is different enough to differentiate from the 6 and all that. But first off, the logo looks dope as fuck, and I'm sure someone saw that they could do the VII and the evil, and they're like, oh yeah, we're fucking doing that. But also, I get that they need to differentiate from the Resident Evil Raccoon City stories.
Yeah, and the Revelations and all those kinds of games as well, which were supposed to be good, but I have it on Vita, but I haven't played it yet. It's funny because before Resident Evil was announced, I predicted it would be called Biohazard, and I just pulled that out of my ass. Like, it's not like I heard that and I didn't expect it. I was just like, wouldn't that be cool? So we got at least halfway to what it was supposed to be, I think. But Colin was right. Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, I don't know. I just think it would be cool to pay homage to that. To the particular real name of the game. It's called Biohazard in Japan, and you see that happening with other franchises. Dragon Warrior became Dragon Quest finally, like it should have been because of trademark problems, and Rockman is we call it Mega Man. So I was like, well, maybe they can figure that out and finally unify the series, because Resident Evil has cachet, but I'm not so sure it's good cachet anymore, and so I don't think it would have necessarily hurt them.
It's like Final Fantasy in a lot of ways, where it used to be the AAA game, and now it's like, is Resident Evil a AAA game?
Well, we're gonna find out.
That's definitely true.
Because 6
is
came
it
out
true that Resident Evil 7 in Japan is called Biohazard Resident Evil?
Yep,
that's fucking awesome.
That is true.
I love people sometimes. All right, speaking of people I love, we got Gav Condola. The fact that Sun and Moon have sold so well, surely a correlation with the Go phenomenon, correct?
I would assume so.
Then there's a quote. After becoming the most pre-ordered video games in Nintendo history, Pokemon Sun and Moon, the latest games of the wildly popular Pokemon franchise, have now become the fastest selling games that Nintendo has ever launched in the Americas. In less than 2 weeks, Pokemon Sun and Moon for the 3DS family of systems sold a combined total of 3.7 million units. That's an 85% increase over Pokemon X and Y, the previous record holders for Nintendo's fastest selling games, during the same period when those games launched in 2013.
It's very impressive, and I saw that GameStop had noted that that was the best selling game of the year. Better selling for them on a retailer to retailer basis than even Call of Duty. Now that's unbelievable. And we'll know, who knows if those numbers will stay that way. But just the fact that that's in that conversation with Infinite Warfare and even with Battlefield 1 shows you Nintendo's strong legs. 3DS hardware still selling. I kind of feel bad because my nephew Finley was like, I want to get a 3DS. He's like 7 or 8 or whatever.
No,
and I was like, no.
Vita.
And I'm like, no, don't get the 3DS. Like, it's going to die soon. Get the Switch. Just save your money and buy a Switch. And now I'm wondering, I'm like, well, is that bad advice? Because.
Well, what you should have done is you should have got him the $99 Black Friday deal. Because that one looked fucking dope. And $99 for a 3DS with the library.
But there was a whole balloon, right, where
it
it was supposed to go on sale on Black Friday, but they got to pre-order it, and so people who stayed up and tried to do the Black Friday thing, it didn't work out for. There was a whole bunch of people who were pissed off about it.
They're the fucking worst with this shit. And just as an aside, with the NES Classic snafu that's been going on, really not hopeful about Switch's launch now not in terms of the quality of the hardware, but in terms of like ease of getting. I mean, they're just fucking ridiculous. If they can't get that right, we should all be very afraid.
Well, speaking positively about Nintendo, I am fucking stoked. They announced that there's the press events over there in New York the day after the Nintendo Switch presentation, and hopefully I will be going, which is fantastic. We're still working on the details.
Sure you will.
I'm pretty sure you're going, but I don't know if we're. I don't know.
Yeah, great. Anyway,
I don't have your plane ticket.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
We're sending you. Kevin's going in your bag.
It's gonna be great. I can't fucking wait. So there should be impressions and stuff coming from that.
Shout out to New York, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to New York.
Hear it for New York. You ever heard that song?
No, never heard it. 7 million times. You want to beat someone up. Had a lot of pride about that song for about 36 hours, and then they just ripped it right out of me.
Our boy Corey McMaster says, I want to hear more about Final Fantasy. I would love to hear your guys' favorite Final Fantasy soundtracks. Shout out to Corey, by the way, the guy that did the Kind of Funny Animated Series theme song and the latest Kind of Funny Animated Series episode's orchestral score, where he remade the Man of Steel music.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
Straight up baller. Love that motherfucker. But anyway, favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack. What do you think?
It's tough. 4 comes to mind first. 6 is right here behind us. That's Narsh. The town you started in. And I was told by someone that I'm saying that wrong, but it's Narshe, and it's Narsh. So I would say 4 and then maybe 7. I think would be my 2 answers. I think 6 has a strong soundtrack too, but 4 I think is super iconic. The Red Wings theme, the
theme of love.
Yeah, all that. I mean, you can't really go wrong from 4 on, even with 5. But I think that I would say 4 and 7 have the strongest soundtrack. 7 is iconic, obviously.
I'm actually surprised you said that because I know that sometimes 7's a little overblown in your eyes. But I do think that at the end of the day, 7 is the right answer because it is so from top to bottom, like every single song has a meaning and a place. I think that 6 has the strongest songs. I think that its character themes really kind of stand alone in a way that other games don't necessarily have as memorable themes for individual characters. Eris, obviously, in 7 does, but I think a lot of the other characters don't, whereas in 6, each one of their themes is very iconic. 10 soundtrack wasn't that great. It had a couple cool moments. 8 as well. A lot of the boss fight music was cool, and a lot of the fighting music was great, and the final bosses specifically. 9, I think, is an underrated soundtrack. And obviously all the Uematsu stuff is fantastic, but I do think that 7 is a step above the rest of them. I love Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack though.
Florence and the Machine.
Florence and the Machine. Yeah. Again though, it set the tone so well for that. But score talking about Shimamura destroyed it on this, and I loved her work in Kingdom Hearts, and I think that it's nice to be able to hear her music and style in a different instrumentation that's not just a whole bunch of freaking like weird ass clarinets and shit and like Disney sound and stuff in Kingdom Hearts. Like the Final Fantasy, the use of her piano and all that stuff is fucking great. So yeah. Owen Palmer, aka at word925. How do you decide what to play during times when there are several games out that you want to play /beat? Welcome to my life right now. Holy shit.
It's hard.
There's so much going on, and I have a copy of Last Guardian, but I don't know when the hell I'm playing that shit. I've been waiting for that game forever. I want to play that game now. But Final Fantasy 15's here, so I ain't playing that shit for a while.
I mean, we're spoiled, right? I mean, and that's the thing is like you got to play what you want to play at this point. And I think last night I was playing Last Guardian, and I knew I had to stop at some point to start Final Fantasy because I knew that'd be a topic today, and I can talk about that today. So I was actually doing things, order of operation all wrong. I should have put off Last Guardian, but I wanted to jump in and see. I had to see it with my own eyes what this game was all about, because for me, that's a PlayStation story I've been following for so long and covering for so long. But then jumping into Final Fantasy is like, oh, and now it's kind of done this thing where it's like, okay, man, I had so much fun with Final Fantasy. I want to get home and finally beat that Watch Dogs mission and then get back to Final Fantasy. But then, yeah, get right back to Last Guardian because it's all part of the same conversation. And that sucks, but it's also the problem of, to his question, Watch Dogs is still in the conversation right now because it's so close to being finished. And Final Fantasy is so long that there's no way for me to sit down, I don't feel like, and play through that and then move to something else. I feel like I'm gonna have to juggle that with other games for a while. And the great, for me is like Dead Rising 4. I was so stoked when they announced Dead Rising 4, and I'm still stoked for it, but it's like, that is now on the back burner until I'm through Final Fantasy, or at least done with Final Fantasy and through The Last Guardian, or at least done with The Last Guardian.
It goes back to the argument, not the argument, but the conversation I was making earlier in the year when I kind of just accepted that there were games I just wasn't going to play. That I used to kind of tell myself or lie to myself even that, like, well, I'll get to that eventually. And then it's just about the idea of just saying, well, I'm not playing Watch Dogs 2. It's not going to happen. So that even frees me up and eases my mind. But the Letter Quest remaster thing I said before, where I'm like, well, I have Final Fantasy 15 and The Last Guardian, but I kind of just want to play Letter Quest because I just really like it. I'm like, well, you just got to be true to what you want to play. I don't think, I've said it before, I don't think there's anything to prove in this regard. So I balance it out in the sense of like what draws me in and what has its hooks in me. And a PR friend of ours asked me on Twitter today, she asked, when I said about Final Fantasy 15 not having its hooks in me yet, she asked, well, how much time do you give a game to give your hooks in? Is it an hour? Is it half an hour? Is it 10 hours? And I'm like, 3 hours maybe at the most. And if it doesn't, then I'm out. Because of this particular conundrum, this problem, you come into this quandary pretty often this time of year where it's like, well, I have to choose, and so that means I have to check certain boxes off and know that I'm not going to play those games as well. So that's the way I kind of handle it. So I just kind of go where my heart tells me to go, and sometimes it takes me away from games entirely, and to go watch a TV show or read a book. But in terms of games specifically, because I've been playing a shit ton of games lately, it just, you jump around to what feels best.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. Like even last night, like Final Fantasy is all I wanted to play, but I had Super Mario Maker 3DS, and I was like, you know what? I want to pop this in for just a second, just because there is the Super Mario Challenge mode or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but it's the thing where the 100 Nintendo made courses. And I was like, I just want to see the level of quality. Start playing. I'm like, these are fucking fantastic. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna play that later. But yeah, Mario Maker, for those wondering, it's great. It's gimped as fuck compared to the Wii U version. Like the download system is totally borked, but it's cool to be able to play Nintendo-made Mario Maker levels and all the tools that are there to make it. Making things isn't my favorite thing to do, so I'm not going to do that. But I can't wait to have this game as a platform that I can play on airplanes for the rest of my life.
Sure.
And hopefully, this is a sign that the Switch version will fix all of our issues with everything. Final question is kind of tied into that a little bit. Juan Casares says, with so many games always coming out, how are we not burnt out? How are game makers not burnt out?
Oh, I mean, I don't think game makers are burnt out because they're not making all of the games. A studio works on a game for 2.5, 3.5, 4, 5 years. So I think that they get burned out on one game, and then they're probably excited to play all these different games that we're kind of inundated with and maybe get tired of. I've said before, and I say it boldly, and it's going to happen again. I get tired of games sometimes, and I've gone months without playing games when I was at IGN, with the exception of games that I had to play for work and covering my beat and all that kind of stuff. I would go home and not play. I didn't turn on my PS3 for a long time, at times, because I'm like, I don't owe any. I owe it to the only thing I owe anything to is myself to like be happy and content with what I'm doing. So sometimes you have to step away from games. Just like this year I'm a huge football fan, but I've been watching fewer football games. I watch every Jets game, but I don't feel the need to sit there all day and then on Monday night and Thursday night watching every fucking game because I'm trying to prove something. I'm like, I just don't want to do this right now. It doesn't make me any less of a football fan. So I think that's kind of how I justify getting burned out or not getting burnt out. The answer is that I do get burned out.
Yeah, see, I've never gotten burned out, and I don't think that I can because of how I play games. Like, I have always just played the ones that I want to play or ones that people have recommended to me because they think I'm going to like them. Like, I've never been the guy that plays everything. So I think because of that, I don't get burned out because I usually am aware of the experience that I'm getting. And that's kind of like I can't imagine getting burned out on movies or burned out on TV. It's just games are just games. So it's like, unless you're looking at them as I need to play every single one the moment it comes out and like all this stuff, like that's when the stress comes into it and that's when the fun goes away. So it's like, I can imagine getting burned out in that way. I mean, an example of that to an extent on my end is Final Fantasy. It's just like, fuck, I want to beat it because I want to have fun with it, but also because I want to be able to speak about it on the show. So it's like the job aspect does
changes thing, right?
A level to it, but it's like, even having said that, like at the end of the day, I want to play Final Fantasy because I want to play Final Fantasy.
No, that's
like,
a big part. I mean, to the Watch Dogs point, right? Like at some point I had to stop doing side ops in Watch Dogs. I was like, no, I got to get through this because there's a million other games coming out. I want to be able to play them and talk about that as it comes. But those games are also ones I want to play. If Watch Dogs 2 was the last release and Final Fantasy and Last Guardian and Dead Rising weren't games I actually wanted to ever touch, then I'd have no problem still fucking around with it and be like, oh yeah, that's fine. Kind of how I am with Dishonored, right? I'll get to Dishonored when I get to Dishonored. I'm not in a hurry or anything. I want to try it because so many people think I'll like it. But yeah, I mean, I think being burned out is one thing, but not being interested in any games that are out right at that moment is another. Because that's for me, like video games are always going to be my preferred mode of entertainment. They're what I want to do. But there's plenty of times I look at my cross media bar or my library and I'm just like, no, none of this is what I want to do right now. So I'm going to go do something else and read comics or, go do this. Well, Portillo, I guess. He's been peeing in the corner.
There he goes. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Thank you very much for watching this. Until next time, I love you.